What's up everyone, my name is Daniel Livingstone and today I'm going to be going through a BTS breakdown of my latest video titled What Moves You. So in this video, I'm going to be explaining how I made this project from concept to export, and then towards the end, I'm going to be going over my biggest takeaways and lessons to hopefully help you in your next project. If you haven't seen the full video yet, please go support it on my Instagram page or my YouTube channel, but before we get deep into the breakdown of this video, you're going to want to check it out right here. The concept of the video showcases the movements we do in both our fitness and our everyday lives. I originally had the idea when I was weightlifting and thought to myself, what kind of applications do these movements have outside of the gym? That's when I started taking down some parallels in my notes app and then bouncing the idea off of a couple friends. I decided I was going to do this project back in March of 2023. Now, whenever I do make the decision to start a project, I'll usually put together what's called a production book for it. This is a PDF that outlines all the logistic information for the cast and crew. Usually this includes things like place, time, vision, and so on. This usually starts with a title page that shows the project name, your logo, and potentially a client's logo if there is one involved. The next page has some sort of explanation as to why you're doing the shoot or the story that you're trying to tell. In this case, it goes as follows. There are tons of movements that we do in and outside of exercise, running to the bus, grabbing our groceries, even slacking off at work. This project aims to showcase the visual similarity in how we move our bodies in all sorts of contexts, using match cuts to tie in those similarities even closer. Our subjects will be showcased all around the city, moving back and forth between fitness and everyday situations, including an office, the beach, mag mile, and a basketball court. After this, I list my schedule. It shows a day, date, and times for when we're doing everything, including call, shooting, lunch, breaks, travel, and wrap. This really helps everybody stay on the same page and know what they're getting into before they accept the shoot. Next is location information. I always include the name of location as well as an address and a screenshot of a map on this page just to make absolutely sure that everyone knows exactly where to be. I also personally include parking information of the area as well, just so everyone can plan ahead accordingly. Then we have our visual reference page. This could include either a mood board or even a storyboard, maybe even a pre-light sample, it's up to you. But when I do my motion projects, I usually do a visual pre-composition, so I'll go out and shoot as much of the video as I can, ideally on location with stand-in subjects, just so I get an idea of what lenses, what focal lengths, what compositions I want to use for the final video. I'll then take screenshots from that and then use that as my storyboard for the production book. The last page is a crew list containing names, titles, emails, and profile pictures. I personally like to include these profile pictures because it builds a sense of familiarity amongst the team, as well as providing important contact information for the rest of the crew. To keep costs low, I tried to maximize on all the gear that I already own to avoid on rentals. So I used for the camera body my Canon R5, I used my 24-70 EF 2.8 lens, as well as my 70-200 EF 2.8 lens. To be able to use those lenses, I used my EF to RF drop-in filter adapter, and then because of that, I was able to use my Canon variable ND drop-in filter, which was a huge lifesaver for those outdoor scenes. I used a Atomos Ninja V Plus external recorder that allowed me to shoot in both ProRes RAW and C-Log 3 Cinema Gamut profile. I used my Ronin RS3 Pro Gimbal, which I coincidentally bought just before the first shoot of this project, and that really allowed me to get those running shots to make them cinematic and smooth. When it comes to grip, I didn't do anything super special. I kept it simple, regular C-stands, my Manfrotto tripod, gaff tape, A-clamps, my cart wagon from Lowe's, and a Pelican case just to haul gear around in. So now it's time to talk a little bit about production. The first scene that you see with the bus and the track was shot at two locations, the first one being on a nearby corner of Michigan Avenue on Mag Mile, and the second one is at East Lakeshore Park, which is a pretty local park to where I'm at, so it was really easy for me to travel to with minimal expenses. The crew involved one model, hair and makeup artist, myself, and an assistant. I wanted to make sure that we were as prepared as possible to do this scene because it was going to be the first shoot for the entire project. I wanted it to go to a good start. So I actually did a visual pre-comp for it with Aura, who was coincidentally the final model, but I was not intending for her to be when I first did the pre-comp. So we shot all the scenes with her in it. Then I went back to that location with a different model to do a stand-in to get more practice into with the gimbal for my running shot, because I knew that was going to be extremely difficult to shoot. So we did the second shoot there with a different model. Then the first official shoot of the project was with a third model, and unfortunately there was some complications in communication, and the initial model that was supposed to be in the final product showed up to the wrong location on the day of the shoot, on the morning of the shoot, and she was 2 hours late to the actual location that we were going to be shooting in. And one thing that I could have done as a solution was actually rearrange the schedule on the fly, but even then, after we finished the shoot, I went through and reviewed the footage, and the talent's performance really wasn't up to my standard. It felt awkward and it wasn't really right, so I decided to recast and reshoot that entire first scene with Aura, who I did the original pre-comp with. So it's funny that it came that full circle, but I'm really, really happy with the way Aura was able to perform, and the crew for just kind of sticking with me through that difficult, speed bump. Beyond that, I also knew that I was going to need to do some additional stabilization in post. So I actually used a much wider focal length on my lens than I normally would for that shot, because I knew I was going to have to stabilize and crop in post. So to break down the budget of this first scene, I told you I did the pre-comp. That didn't cost me anything. Even travel, I actually walked to location. For the stand-in shoot that I did with the second model, that ended up costing me $31.70, which is the there and back trip via Lyft. On the official shoot, I actually took 3 lifts that day. One to get to location. I realized when I got to set that I actually forgot my neutral density filter at home, so I had to take a ride back home and then another ride back to set, all before the shoot started. So that ended up costing me $41.87. And for the final shoot that I did the reshoot for, I walked to set again. That didn't cost me anything either. So between all of the travel, just between those multiple shoots, that cost me a total of $73.57, and that's just for travel. Now, when it comes to styling for props and clothes, accessories, wardrobe, I did that all myself. I went to Target, I got everything I needed for that scene, and that came out to be a total of $356.53. I did end up returning all of the stuff that I used for it. I kept it in good condition, kept the tags on and everything, so I returned all that. So that was actually a null cost. So all I spent on this first scene was just travel of like $75, which is not bad at all. So for the second scene that involves the deadlifting, we shot that at 2 locations. We did it at a local grocery store, and we did it at a gym that is in River North that I have access to. We didn't need to travel for the first one, so there's no cost there. As for the gym scene, I did need to travel to it with gear, so I had to get a XL rideshare lift. So the total for that there and back came out to be $28.19. But at any rate, that was probably the easiest shoot that we did for this entire project. So the third scene, which is the overhead drone scene, was so much fun to make. I actually had the opportunity to collaborate with a drone operator who I've known in the photography world for years, and that was really fun to do. We shot at one location, which was North Avenue Beach. The 2 scenes, while looking extremely different, are actually shot very, very close to each other at the same place. There's just a sandy beach area, and then there's a little park grassy area next to it, so we didn't have to travel super far. I just walked home with all my gear in a wagon. One important thing to note about collaborating with drone operators is that since this was a personal project with very little budget and no money involved, I was able to work with a personal friend of mine on a favor. However, if there was a client involved and there was a lot of money and licensing and stuff, you would need to hire a licensed drone operator, and that's really important to keep in mind for your projects. And now for the fourth scene, the basketball scene, this is where the break happened. This is where the project really started to go south for me. Normally getting talent together and getting locations is difficult, but in the case of this scene, I had an especially hard time putting all those things together and making the logistics work to produce this shoot. I initially had my #1 dream pick for a location, which was like a skyline basketball court here in the city, and I knew some people that worked there, and I was trying everything I could to find a way in to be able to shoot there, along with my #1 pick for talent. Unfortunately, neither of those things worked out, and it was really, really discouraging for me to not be able to execute the vision as I wanted to. This kind of put a sour taste in my mouth and made me not want to finish the project at all for a good while. There was actually a 2-month break between the basketball scene shoot and the previous scenes shoot that I left it off at. I had to wrestle with some difficult feelings about, perfectionism and wanting to make sure I'm telling the story in the way that I want to tell it, but whether or not it looks exactly how you want it to in the first place doesn't matter as much as getting it out at all and finishing the project. Eventually got inspired to shoot at a different location that I thought would suit this pretty well. Once I figured that out, it kind of reignited my passion for this project after thinking for a while that it wasn't even worth finishing. But once I figured that out, I decided to reach out to a bunch of friends. I just picked a date immediately, and then within the week of doing that shoot, I was frantically reaching out to every contact I had, being like, hey, do you want to be a part of this? Do you want to shoot this? Do you want to be featured in this? Can you play basketball? Because that was a really important part of it. Luckily, I had the help of my friend Carl, who he himself is a photographer as well, and certainly doesn't mind being comfortable in front of the lens. Luckily, he was able to play basketball and then brought in some friends of his own as extras. And that really helped me because their performance wasn't as vital, so I wasn't super stressed about that. All I was worried about was my key role. So when it came to the budget for this shoot, I ended up taking a lift to the shoot, bringing my own gear, keeping it light. I did take the CTA back home from the shoot, which is still pretty inexpensive. The total came out to be $19.17, which pretty good. Really, really good for an on-location shoot like this. Originally, I wanted to collaborate with a separate editor for this project. It was really tough to find someone willing to commit to this project for no budget, and I completely understand that, so I did end up taking all the editing up on my own. On the plus side, I get to show you all the ins and outs of what I did to make this project a reality in the post. So this is my timeline for the project. You can see that the video tracks are pretty simple. It's usually just 1 or 2 different tracks. There's a third here for an effect that I had to add. And then there's a ton of audio tracks in here. I can even expand this timeline to show you more. When it comes to transitions, usually my style leans more towards whip pans and zooms and spins and things that have a lot of motion in them that tie one scene to the next. But I did take the opportunity to learn more about DaVinci Resolve for this project. Normally I do this stuff in Premiere, and I have a bunch of plugins and effects in Premiere already that let me do these kinds of transitions, so I did have to kind of explore and learn a little bit more about DaVinci to be able to get those same effects in this program. I did end up finding a creator who creates his own transition pack called Mr. Alex Tech. I downloaded these for free from his YouTube channel. They're awesome. I would definitely recommend going and checking them out. So our first transition shows the model running from left to right, so I obviously decided to do a whip pan going from left to right to match that movement and bring those scenes together. One of the most interesting transitions of this video is this transition from bus to track. And the way that I did that is I actually shot a plate running past a sign, and then I masked out that sign you can see here in this clip, and this is its own layer. So this kind of moves across the screen, and then I do a little mask behind it to transition from the left scene to the right scene. You can see here we got half of the previous, half of the new, and this is just covering that crop line right in the middle. You can really see it here in the drone scene where we're already spinning with the drone, and then I'm just using the transition to match that movement. So one big thing that I learned from this project in the post side is sound design, and in the past I've played around a little bit with adding effects or definitely like creating sound effects with a transition, but this is the first time that I really focused on sound design of the scenes and the visuals. So I did a lot of research and I dug really deep into some sound libraries through Envato Elements, and I tried to download as many sound effects as I could from what you were seeing on the screen. And that's a combination of ambience for the scene, which is one layer, and then beyond that you have individual sound effects from things that you see, whether it's general city ambience and then on top of that a car or a horn, or if you're in the park it's general wind and then birds, and then you hear the steps of the person running on the track. I'm going to disable the video tracks and just pay attention to what you're hearing and try to imagine a scene in your head just from the audio alone. So you already get an idea. The first scene is obviously in the city, the second scene is obviously in a park, the next scene is back in the city, and the next scene is in a gym because you hear the clanking and the rattling of weights and people talking. To break that down, we have a bunch of different effects here. We have a bus horn sound effect, into a swoosh, and then a smooth blend into the park scene. So I did a lot of crossfades here on my ambient sound effects to transition the scenes very seamlessly without it being too hard of a cut. The goal is to basically create a sense of sound that's realistic in the scene, even though I wasn't recording audio. And if we disable the music, you'll understand what I mean a lot more. And that's just the ambience. So if I add sound effects in there, I also added footsteps wherever applicable, especially in the basketball scenes, along with the backboard. On top of that, I had to add a couple extra effects like reverb and echo to make them realistic with the scenes they were in, since a lot of sound effects you'll get online were recorded in a clean studio. After we're done with all of the logical and realistic sound effects, we can get more creative with things by adding more sounds that are meant to evoke feelings. So I created sound effects whenever you saw a transition happening to really punch that transition home. So the triple whoosh from the back and forth, as well as the drone scene. Since we're going all the way up to a drone's perspective, I decided to add a jet flyover to kind of evoke the feelings of flying. I'm still a bit of a beginner when it comes to color grading inside of DaVinci Resolve, but I have watched a number of tutorials and tried to get a general sense of how node structures work and proper workflows. In any given scene, there's always a color space transform node, and that's usually towards the end of my workflow. And I was shooting in Canalog 3, Cinema Gamut, and I wanted to output for Rec 709 Gamut 2.4. That's pretty straightforward, and that just basically converts my log footage into fully realized color. Before that, I'll add an exposure node first, then I'll do a contrast node to let me dial in my lift, my gamma, and my gain. I'll do a balance node, and this is strictly for color, so I'll do things like temperature, tint, hue sat, levels and curves. Then if I want to add a vignette or a reverse vignette, I'll do that. Those all feed into my color space transform node. So all these effects are being handled before it's even converted. And then after the color space transform node, I'll do my qualifying nodes. So stuff like this where I want to mask out skin. It's easier to grab masks like that after the CST if I want to do things based on color. For the drone beach scene, I actually had to do a little bit of, let's say, visual effects. I had to take the shadow of the drone out of the beach scene, so I did that in a node before all my color adjustments and exposure adjustments here, and I just used a patch tool and then kind of just patched all along the path of the drone. So you can see here, it's gone, and then another patch here, all the way to the end of the scene. Now this is happening before all my adjustments so that the change is made and then everything kind of fills in naturally. You're not seeing the edit that I made. And with the drone scenes, we did shoot it with obviously a different camera, so my input is DJI D Gamut. We shot in D-Log, but I'm still converting it to the same output color space, which is Rec 709 Gamut 2.4. The basketball scene follows almost the exact same node structure. We have exposure, we have our contrast, we have our color balancing, we have a vignette, we have a reverse vignette, and then we have our color space transform. And then beyond that, we have a qualifier, just to change the hoop rim from pink to red. So, the real reason that I'm creating this video in the first place is to overall reflect on this project and really figure out what my core takeaways were from the whole experience. The biggest takeaway from this is don't give up on a project, even if your heart falls out of this. This may be a very temporary feeling and you just need to get over it and move on and finish the project. One thing that's helped me a lot is realizing that different stages of the process, if you're like me and you're kind of involved in every single step of the way, is that you may have a passion for certain parts over others, and there might be something to look forward to. A different step in the process may reinvigorate your passion for the project. I know it did for me. Once I finished shooting the last scene, I was really excited to get into editing, and once I was finished editing the timeline, I was really excited to get into color. So things like that are definitely great to look ahead to and help you really get through a project. A critique on myself is that I still don't feel like this video is at the production level that I want my work to be. although it is a big step in the right direction. However, this project has taught me so much about production and what goes into creating scenes like this. And now I know moving forward the bare minimum that I have to do to even get to this level. And then beyond that, just investing more time and resources and getting more people to help out to take this stuff to the next level. And that's about it. That wraps up the BTS breakdown of the What Moves You video shoot. If you got a lot out of this video and the information that I provided, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'll be posting more BTS breakdowns of future projects that I do for the rest of the year, so look forward to that. And as always, my name is Daniel Livingstone, and you be sure to do something creative today. Take care.